Oh, yeah, oh, hello. It is Wednesday. Hello, everyone. Good to see all the people showing up on time. Got a lot of the brilliant regulars, Cherie, Typical New Herbs, aka Kyle, Kabir, Cosmic Fern Tree, Liam coming in hot with the 888 Euro super chat out the gate. My man. Got Silly
Out the
Bear.
Lion's Gate.
Got
right.
Mick Mac. Got Wifey, Jenny G. So we're here to all get initiated into a brand new cult. I have already joined. There are just a few requirements. You must got to be a brother. You got to be great. And you have to own and use a whiteboard, which I finally have done. I now have a whiteboard. I'm part of the movement. Also, you don't have to be white yourself, but so far we all are. So you might want to try to be white to fit in, but that is not strictly a rule. So we've got PK back in the house. This is really exciting because it's a audience member, regular participant that is more than qualified to share gravy and ask great questions. And so this is his second time joining us. And overall, you know, I'm joking around, but the Great Whiteboard Brotherhood is kind of a real thing. It's as Paranoid American may have coined the term, I don't know, but it's a think tank. That's like a think tank, but with synchronicity. And been, you know, myself a bit on the sidelines of the amazing ideas that they circulate. But I'm excited to catch up to where they're at tonight, at least giving it an attempt and just kind of have a fun, laid back hangout and, you know, Q&A amongst ourselves about some of the things that this think tank, the Great Whiteboard Brotherhood is getting into. And for anybody that just didn't get the joke, the Great White Brotherhood is a concept in, you know, esotericism. So we're playing our part here as the good guys behind the scenes, communicating with the archetypes, constructing systems of correspondence that allow for the generation of fresh intelligence about the realm, about ourselves. It's going to be a fun hang tonight. Really happy to see everybody streaming in. So, PK, man, welcome back to the show. Excited to have you, brother.
Thanks. Glad to be back. Looking forward to this one. I will say it can be a little intimidating to jump right in to the Great Whiteboard Brotherhood. We go in all directions. So I could see, you know, just jumping in. We're like, man, what if you were a fly on the wall of this conversation? We'd all be like put up in a mental institution, most likely.
At least Gabe.
At least, well, Gabe for sure. But so it's really good to be here. I want to say this. I hope we get some call-ins to the Vibrant hotline. And I say that, and I'm kind of pointing at myself too. I got to do better at calling in. I think that adds a lot to the show. So I hope we get some call-ins from the chat tonight. We're going to go over a bunch of stuff. So strap in.
Yeah, Gabe, how would you like to introduce your own personal cult following, man?
Yeah, this is so fabulous. You know, it's great to have such a wide bandwidth of input. And also, it's nice to not believe that I'm only talking to myself or, you know, fulfilling my own bias, you know. Yeah. And I couldn't choose a brother, a better sect of brothers than all of these heads that we got in our family. So uh, I guess one thing to kind of steer the ship in the direction of what brought this current into our horizons had a lot to do with. I did a show with George over on Third Eye Edify a while back about the myth of Odysseus. And I walked through the Enneagram in its old original arrangement, which is not on the board now necessarily. Another white brotherhood. And in that show, I'm I was bringing forward some research from a fellow who I believe his name is Michael something Steen. Oh man, I forget that fellow's name, but he has a really great case about the Enneagram being conveyed in Odysseus's story of the Odyssey. And he doesn't use tarot cards. He's just using the personality types and the vices, the virtues, and the remedial qualities of each station. And he's flowing in reverse, which makes perfect sense because I have found that the Iliad goes clockwise, starting with Achilles, facing off with Agamemnon. And also, the first words in the Odyssey are mania, rage, which is an anagram for Enneagram. And so that fascinating fact led me to believe that I could go clockwise through the Enneagram to lay out the Iliad. I haven't really substantiated that because in another case that is made out there is that the Iliad is masculine and the Odyssey is feminine, and that there's it's all blood and gore and action in the Iliad, but the Odyssey is like about recompense and reconciliation and uh, all is fair in love and war if you can live without honor. And so Odysseus is seeking honor, and he takes a long time to find it on his journey home. And so this fellow, who I can't remember his name, makes a great case that the Odyssey is going in reverse order through the stations. So I brought that over to our buddy George, and made a great case that the Odyssey is the Enneagram in reverse. It's so fascinating, but I've actually rearranged the cards so that the visual correspondences are different now. But I'm looking at the same Enneagram with the same vices and virtues. And sure enough, my new arrangement kind of has better visual correspondence to the Odyssey. And one thing that I've been just fascinated about is how the rho, number 19 in the Greek alphabet, corresponds to Polyphemus. And a lot about the mysteries of Polyphemus and this controller with the shadow of domineering or lust. You could just go for days just talking about a single station on the Enneagram. So this is very surface level. But part of my revelation had to do with possessiveness, ownership, control, and how today we attribute control to the letter S and the apostrophe S. Um, and then, just kind of as we were chewing it over on the Great White Brotherhood, a PK was bringing forward some interesting correspondences at the same time. I'm thinking about how today your name, your person, has a flag that is the apostrophe S that tells people who you are by virtue of what family you belong to. And I'm still chewing on why is the rho now the number in the 19 in Greece, but to us it's the letter S in English. And I think it's a long bridge between here and there, but we've come to postulate that the rho is the oar that steers the ship in a way. Um, and back in the Greek language, they didn't the control of the sentence is not rooted in the nouns. Today, from our perspective, we put a lot of control and preeminence on nouns. But in the Greek language, they put the preeminence on verbs, and verbs control the sentence. And so, over on our Telegram channel, I have a lot of random ranting and chewing on a lot of just fleeting thoughts as they come across my radar. It's really fun to share that with the fellas and get some feedback. And it's coming to our mind that we still have little remnants of this fact in that last names in English are often what your family does for a living. Like you're a cobbler, you know. Am I good? I got zapped for a second. Am I good?
You're coming back. Yeah, you're good.
No.
Nope, he's zapped.
Okay. Okay.
Man, talk.
Okay. So yeah, so we still have remnants of this fact that we identify with what we do in our last names still. And a lot of family names have a OR or an ER on the end of the name that indicates that your family is what they do for a living. And so this is I think a real powerful nugget of gnosis that our mind still I always say that Babylon mentality is when your possessions own you, when the things around you are too abundant that you can't pack up in a day and change your mind and turn on a dime. And that is what Babylon culture is all about, is when the possessions are too excessive and they own and control your decisions. And now we're looking at this fact that in the old days, there were actually people who put more preeminence on the verbs and the ability to be more action oriented in commanding all of the thoughts of every sentence. And so I have a quick metaphor and then I'll hand it over. I like to kind of convey this in a metaphor of in the Greek sentence, if every word was a finger bone, there would be one unique bone. It would be your trapezium. That's your saddle joint of the thumb. And you put that in a cup with all the other words in the sentence. You can mix the cup up and spill it out on a plate, and it doesn't matter where the other words land. The trapezium, much like a dodecahedron dice, the way that it turns up has control over all the other words. And that is just a fascinating metaphor. I don't know if that's an apt metaphor, but I think it's a good place to begin to see how the verb had control of the Greek language. And control is the essence of a number 8 personality type. And so I'm just looking at this in a really fascinating experimental light, because in the cave of Polyphemus, he asks what Odysseus' name is, and he says, I am no one. And so he just and he's going through a nihilistic existential crisis also. So it's actually honest of him to say, I'm not identifying with anything right now. I'm not sure who I am, so I'm going to be no one. And it's a stroke of genius that ends up working in his favor, but then he kind of screws up later. So yeah, that's what got us here, and that just kind of sets the stage for uh, stepping out of our paradigm, the Babylonian paradigm of identifying with the nouns too excessively. And it's also detrimental because nouns they can change the definition of words on you, and that's actually a scar against your soul. I believe that language is our soul, and the more languages you speak, the more soulful you are. And so these are just kind of some of the nuggets that got us on this weave, and I'll hand it over. And you guys can see what you think.
I definitely enjoy what you're laying down there, man. And that last part about language being our soul, potential corroboration of that would be how people who have near-death experiences in which they might encounter the oversoul, they meet the Jesus or the Buddha figure, they go through the tunnel into the heavenly realm, they hear the music of the spheres, right? And sometimes people come back from those experiences with an entire new language installed in their consciousness. Like they can just speak some language they never knew before, or they can read it or write it. So you may have a point there that our soul itself has something deep to do with language. And I want to maybe open by this. Maybe you could call this in philosophy like apologetics, right? like, not that I'm sorry for you, but that I'm gonna make some justifications for the way that you operate, Gabe, and the way that the think tank and synchromysticism operates in general, but above and beyond anyone else I've ever seen, that you're the most active participant in the process. And that is the construction of systems of correspondence. And this is something that from the outside to the supposed realist, right? Somebody who's in the framework of reality that has to do with the fundamental assumption that there's a real reality that exists and that certain ideas or observations or personal beliefs and convictions would match that real reality more than others. But these objective facts, if we go back to the beginning, where does the word fact come from? It comes from facere in Latin, which means to make, to fabricate. You're creating it. So facts are construction. That's absolutely the case. And there's, to get into the philosophy side of things that I find really interesting. I've been looking at some of the ideas from Carl Jung this last week more closely. And in particular, Jung was just such a crusher. But in particular, he had this notion developed from a study of synchronicities that led him to believe that the greater part of the psyche lies outside of the personal self. So let me parse that into more clear terms. The psyche is the soul or the mind. And so the greater part of the psyche outside the personal self, what he's saying is that the world, the consensus reality that we share and co-inhabit, is the densest layer of your psyche, is the deepest and most permanent or difficult to budge or change layer of your psyche. So in this framework, your everything is mind and your body is in your mind. The body is one of the more mutable layers of the mind, whereas these other forces that seem to be acting of their own volition and agency, they're the parts of you that you're really attached to. And then, so with that idea, holding that idea, we now have to rearrange our relationship to the external world. And the synchromystic is always engaged in this process, in that our perception of our belief systems are what we think corresponds one thing to another, the facts that we hold to be true or that we've created for ourselves, that they are going to emerge out in the greater part of your psyche that is the world. And this expanded framework of Jung, it points to how a greater and more comprehensive mind than just the conscious ego mind that we experience on the day-to-day is somehow at play in a principle of associations by similarities. And that's what synchronicity is pointing us to, that something about the framework of this bigger part of ourself, the more permanent and eternal part of our psyche, our mind, it operates by systems of correspondence, similarities. And that's where we get these bizarre synchronicities. You think of somebody and then they show up. You hear a word in your earbuds listening to a podcast, and then that same obscure word at the exact same moment crosses your eyes. You see it just somewhere out there. I mean, I don't have to explain what synchronicity is, but what we're saying, or what I'm saying with all this, is that how Gabe does his whole charting things to the Enneagram, putting things upon the wheel of the year, everything you see on his whiteboards behind him, he is actively participating in the construction of these systems of correspondence, such that the outer layers of the psyche are more engaged or able to communicate back to him. He's sending a signal out. It's like dropping depth charges to try to get the echolocation of what's at the bottom of the ocean in those deep trenches that you can't see for yourself. And I mean like the deep, deep trenches. This is like a really old philosophical idea. And in Ptolemaic system of the spheres of the cosmos, it was actually understood that at the very least, the outermost sphere, the thing that encircles all of it, had its own mind to it. And now we get into, what is part of the teased conversation revolving around like the noun being holding the power or the driver's seat rather than the verb, where our entire system of language and self-identification is being driven by this like I am that rather than I am doing, or like I can't even do it in English. Like I have to put the I am in there to even construct the sentence. Whereas in older languages like the ancient Greek, the verb itself indicated who was doing the action and what the action was being done to, such that the agency or the center of the soul, if the language has something to do with our soul, was the process of becoming rather than focused on being. Like this whole philosophical question of being versus becoming is maybe it has to do with the whole left brain, right brain split. But we've evolved through linguistic drift to the point where, I think we can actually see maybe a reason why the degradation of culture or society or humanity is manifest in obsession with pronouns. Because now with a noun, person, place, or thing, you're indicating a representation, right? It's an attempt to describe how something was in a specific moment, but is spoken in a sense like that it's a permanent thing. It's really hard to even wrap your head around this in English, but that you are what you're becoming in this moment. You're not a permanently this or that. So when we identify ourselves with a noun, and then we go to another layer where we're calling ourselves or others by pronouns, it's like a representation of a representation. I hope that's making sense. I've been kind of at it for a minute, so maybe I'll just kick it over to PK for continued thoughts on this.
Man, how do I follow that, guys? Ooh, you guys laid out so much. Jung is super interesting, and that's good to hear that you're getting more into him. I feel like Jung really has to speak in like an academic way. Like, understand when you look up the word psychology, it used to mean one who treats the soul. Like literally, comes from psyche, which is what the Greeks called the soul, which I'm sure most of you know. But so he always is kind of doing this double speak. He's like, I want to say some mystical shit right now, but a bunch of my scholarly friends are going to be reading this, so I gotta like watch my words and watch my nouns specifically. And it's interesting that English seems to be, I will say, like more focused on nouns, but that's only because the way just, we're looking at kind of one other language, right? The way ancient Greeks did it is like you said, Chance, the pronoun or whatever, if you will, was in the verb. You could tell by the verb stem if it was you, they, I, so it was all kind of wrapped in. And what was really cool about this is that one of their things that made it such a powerful language is that they had very flexible word order. So, depending on what you want to emphasize, you could start your sentence with the noun, or you could start it with the verb, or have the verb before the noun, whatever. It didn't matter. And so think about the creativity that opened up. Like that's why Homer could write in iambic pentameter, right? Whereas in English, it's like virtually impossible, because to stay to a strict, whatever you call that in poetry.
Meter.
yeah, to say to a strict meter is so hard because our words have to be in a certain order, or else it doesn't make sense or the meaning's lost. So that was one of the things, and think about just the creativity that opens up, right?
Yeah, it
Like
makes the whole
what you
language
could do
more
with
of a
that,
dance. Like the whole language is more of a
for
dance
sure.
because right now you're on this side, but then you spin around in do-si-do and your partner's on the other side, and the words can flow around and through each other like that.
Yeah, absolutely. The correspondence thing is I want to talk about that for a sec because and it's a slippery slope. I feel like the more correspondences you learn, maybe the more you learn and like integrate these correspondences, the more you can see. So it's that's why I like learning so much, is because that helps me kind of participate in all the, if I watch a movie or, even the world stage, you could pick up these correspondences, right? So it's super fun. One of the things that I think was weird about the whole being becoming thing is that I think it was Plato, one of these philosophers. They said that the gods are eternal, which is okay, that's cool. But then they say and unchanging. And so that to me, doesn't sit that well, because this whole idea, and I'm sure, this is a new idea. Most people probably heard it, right? Like, we now think of God as a noun when perhaps more aptly could be a verb, describing the eternal now or whatever, right? God is godding, you know, godding always is, always will be, always was, So it's just interesting to kind of spin it like that, and give some power to the verb instead of being in this kind of still defined, boxed in definition, which is a noun, and then a verb is changing. So I never really understood that. Have you ever heard that, where they say like the gods are eternal and unchanging before?
That is something that's described, but but it's kind of one of those paradoxes because if the gods represent nature, the consistent thing about nature is is changing. But it
Right.
changes in this sort of cyclical way that forms an eternal return back to the starting point. And so it's changing and unchanging simultaneously. And I think that's kind of a good way to describe the gods. And for a little bit of where I'm coming from in talking about Jung and correspondences, it's actually sparked by me getting back, deep diving on like the psychology of the UFO and abduction experiences, and had a recent episode with Mark Gober about that. Have another one for the next show that's taken the whole thing much deeper into a further philosophical level. It's great. It's already been recorded. And what struck me about the phenomenon was the creation mythos of the idea of flying saucers. This case with a pilot named, what was it? Keith something. I'm forgetting, but he basically, this dude in 1947, he sees these 9 luminescent craft that are glowing and scintillating, and he describes it to a journalist when he's reporting the story. He says they move like saucers. He did not ever say that they were saucers. He said a lot of stuff, like he thought that they came from, he had this strange knowing that he thought that they came from the place where we go when we die, for example, which is Keith Arnold. That's the dude's name. You can look up the case. And the reporter who busted open the story to the wider world, he mistranscribed the whole thing, and he said that Keith Arnold reported seeing flying saucers, right? So he's completely got that wrong. He never said that he saw saucers. Well, what happens is a outbreak of sightings in 1947 and 48, and has continued since then, of people reporting seeing flying saucers, to the point where there was more people in 1947 at the end of the year that knew what a flying saucer was than knew who was in charge of the post-war reconstruction of Europe. Like, something that seemed like way more important. So the question becomes, why would this phenomenon that exhibits lots of characteristics of intelligence, why would it change its shape and manifestation based on a description or common expectation that was presented by mistake, right? And this is a big deal. This is like the fact that we have the evidence of that happening is a huge clue to what, like, you might call predictive programming or sorcery in media, social engineering is actually working on. Like, what principle is that working on? It's working on the principle of that intelligence is constructive and works through systems of correspondence. And if you create expectations of a certain correspondence, then that correspondence might actually begin to manifest. Like, lights in the sky are correspondent to saucer shapes, right? And then that starts to actually be what people see and what appears. So when you take things back into your own hands and maybe create the systems of correspondence for yourself that feel more harmonious or coherent or aligned with your intentions or purposes as a being, that's like taking the power back from somebody that implanted like an alien implant in your mind that this goes with this and this means that. And this gets like really close to skirting the edge of solipsism too. So where this maybe could be delineated is in the realm of nature's forms and appearances. There's a certain density of the spectrum that is consistent and remains eternally so. And that's in like plant life and the growth of patterns of life and the cyclical aspects of life. But in the technological realm, which, remember, technology means jargon. It means technical speech, essentially, like lawyer speak or doctor speak. That's the original meaning. And all of our consumer electronics technology is based in code, is based in specified language. So in the realms of technology and in the realms of artifice, things that are not eternal, but are really and truly temporal, that are ideas that are housed in bodies, essentially, like, this marker. If we all forgot about markers and disappeared off the world, we came back later, people aren't going to know what a marker is, that there isn't going to be any markers, right? And markers are a more benign example, but then think about stuff like, I always, when I'm talking about this, I always think back to years ago when I had a vape, right? And it's like a habit that I didn't like that I did. And eventually one day I had this like transcendental experience where, metaphorically or literally, I had like a vibe shift. I was looking at this thing in my hand and I realized this is a mind parasite. This is something that is only existing in my experience, in my mind, like all the rest of reality. It's just in mind. And without me constantly reaching for it and maintaining touch to it and connection with it, it would cease to exist. It would not exist anywhere else. Like, it's there's a lot of these objects that are able to maintain their existence through our constant reference to them. And like physical technology is a big example of that. Anyway, I like smashed it with a hammer and discarded it, and it never appeared again in my reality. It's still in some other people's personal bubble, but that's maybe a silly example. But I'm trying to point to how profoundly important that active participation in creating your own systems of correspondence or understanding, it's not that you're making it up as you go. You're looking for maybe coherent reasons why you might have these associations, but that there's something about intelligence itself that operates on this principle of synchronicity, that by playing the game instead of just receiving the dogma, that it you're participating in intellect plus generation, which is intelligence. It's like it actually raises your IQ and it raises your memory threshold. Like the more links you have in your chain of memories through putting things into maps like this, the more access you have to the whole terrain that the map describes. That's my best shot at it. I think Gabe's ready to come in.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, man. I'm chomping at the bit. You laid out all bounty. So Keith Arnold has the word ether in his name. And let's just play with the possibility that ether is the psyche. And when Jung says that we don't have ideas, the ideas have us. Something that I'm very good at as a mutable dancer is allowing the information to change me as opposed to changing the information for my comfort zone. And so when Keith Arnold put that into the ether, he was informing the mass psyche. And another thing about the ether is it has a great deal to do, maybe, with Elete, the river of Hades, upon which most people go to drink immediately as the new arrivals, the immigrants, are thirsty. And they go straight to the right hand path and they drink from the river of forgetfulness. But the initiated, they have special instructions to go to the palm tree on the left and drink from a different river. And I love that some people require reincarnation to be in the context of DNA, but other people are all about the transmigration of souls. But either way you have to frame it for your comfort zone, it serves the same purpose. And so I do believe in the transmigration of souls, but I put it into the modern day context of DNA or the elders or the ancestors, which your immediate ancestors are, are the most powerful. They're the ones, they're first priority on the list. Um, so I wanted to mention that, and all of these correspondences, these hermetic principles of, I do believe that's the second hermetic principle is correspondence. And also for the folks out there, it's important that you get those hermetic principles in the order that they're presented. Don't flim flam. Keep them exactly the way they're laid out. It's important. But correspondence, I'm pretty sure, is number two, which makes sense. 1 to 1. Correspondence is number two. It's the two pillars. But something about today, we all have more context than any of our elders. We have way more access to gaining context for the information than anybody who ever came before us. And that puts us in a point, not just of privilege, but of responsibility. We have a vast responsibility to access these correspondences in the context of the information to put it into a logos that works, a theurgy that is working for us. And so, yes, what I do and what I'm blessed slash cursed slash responsible for is more context than anybody's ever had. And it does come off as like, um, smart motherfuckers look like crazy motherfuckers to dumb motherfuckers. But it's a blessing and a curse and a responsibility. Um, so I just wanted to put all that. Oh, and then on techne, the techne is jargon. Um, this is an interesting thing because all of the muses that I've discovered represent a different type of techne. And I always say that each muse is a different hallway to categorize the Library of Alexandria. And this is my memory palace. This is how I build my memory palace of correspondences.
Cliffhanger.
Am I good? Am I back?
Okay, you're back.
Okay. Am I back?
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, techne is jargon, and the jargon is classified or categorized. And this could also be somewhat correspondent to secularism, the idea that everything is not everything, and only a psychologist can tell you about psychology, but only a botanist can tell you about plants. But again, we live in a very blessed time of having more context than anybody before us. And so we're all like rogue specialists in everything, jacks of all trade. And so I think we're really knocking down the secular walls that divide the jargon. And we're able to dance in and out of all of these different technes. And that's something that that my memory palace does for me. And last note, I learned it from Giordano Bruno. The memory palace is actually Pico della Morandola's technology that was handed to Giordano Bruno. And I have garnered great gifts from seeing past his universes and other solar systems, all of that. Uh, the real treasures of treasures is the mind palace that Giordano had in his vast on information. And so that's kind of a project that I'm cooking up on the side. So yeah, I just wanted to put jargon into the term of secularism, and we're in a new day and age where that secularism, those divides, they're no longer valid, and we're all kind of jacks of all trades, and that's what we're bringing to the table tonight.
We got a voicemail from Braden.
Sweet.
Yeah, I think we should play it. It's not too long.
Let's
Before we
do
get
it.
too far away from when he sent it, thanks for sending one in, man. Don't forget the call-in line.
Heck
It's
yeah.
pinned into the chat there at the top for the YouTubers.
Speaking of language, I always find it interesting how, in English at least, we have so many homonyms. And I usually give the example when I'm working with clients that words can be so confusing because I could say the word ball, and Susie over there may think of a basketball, Johnny thinks of a baseball, so-and-so thinks of a football, but the entire time I'm speaking about an ancient Phoenician god and no one knows what the hell I'm saying. It's a slippery slope. It's a wicked web, and that's why it's fun to sling it. Cheers, you guys. Good show. All the best. Peace.
Yo, dude,
Speaking
good
of
to hear
language,
from you.
I always
Oh, it's
find
looping. Okay, there we go. Yeah, awesome, man. You know, this it's really intense, man. I wanted to just quote this Enlightenment philosopher, Guillaume Battista Vico, who says human knowledge is nothing else than the endeavor to make things correspond to one another in shapely proportion. Basically, whatever we try to put forward as known, as knowledge, is never going to work as just passive receiving. It's the participatory activity or construction that requires the knowledge. It's like someone can tell the little boy that the stove is hot, but until he participates with touching the stove or witnessing it do something to something else through its heat, he doesn't have knowledge. He just has a fact or information. Yeah, we want more Collins though. And they might know what you're talking about, Braden, better if you say bail. I like to just do that bail instead of ball. But even then, that's got they might think that you're trying to get out of jail or something. I like too that we've been hovering around 34 watchers, which I'll be happy with more, but it's kind of cool because this is episode 139, which is the 34th prime. So maybe there's gravy there too. But you guys want to switch gears a little bit and get into some of the language stuff that PK wanted to introduce into the topic? Is that a good idea right now?
Yeah, let's do it.
Get
First,
our
I can't.
whiteboards going.
Yeah, I can't move forward yet until I share. I'm sure you already know this, but Lethe, the river of forgetting, right? That you would go to, or like when you're dead, you drink from. and then you forget everything, and then you come back, right? And it's so interesting in Greek that truth is basically like a lethe. You know, the word is basically, well, it's a Letheia, the English, but it's basically like not forgetting. You know, it's like not the lethe. I think that's just a super cool.
Yeah, the another binary that works there too is one of the ways to define lethe is like oblivion or non-existence, besides just forgetting and or forgetfulness,
Right.
or something being hidden. So truth in that sense, aletheia, is existence. It's the all that is. That's a good dig. Wonder how much it's worth numerically.
64.
Lethe?
Oh no, truth is 64.
Oh, truth is 64.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember, what's the value of theta?
This is theta is 9. This is that word. You see, can you share?
Yeah, I'm bringing it up.
This is that oblivion word that you were talking about, which is like connected to the lethe. You could see in here the le, it's lambda, eta, theta, eta is how you spell lethe, but this is the verb of it, I guess. And this gets into the
lanthano.
Yeah, lanthano. But this gets into the oblivion, or it's to escape, to be unknown, unseen, unnoticed. Where did it say oblivion?
What is this resource you've
make
got?
one forget? This, all right. I'd love to share my resources because okay, that didn't do it. I have a great website for the Latin and Greek, and it is, here's my favorite. Look, I'll throw it in the YouTube chat. This is my favorite site right here for looking up Latin and Greek in a one-stop shop, and it has like, 4 or 5 dictionaries or whatever in it. It connects to the LSJ, which basically is all that Perseus has. But that site right there is super good.
Yeah, I have a whole folder on my browser dedicated to, or on my bookmarks dedicated to those kind of useful sites, man.
Same. Yeah, that's the best, and I've been through a lot of them. And I like that one. That's my go-to now. Super good, responsive. And then what I really like is you got like, 5 like dictionaries all in one. So yeah, should we get into then want to get into the language part of it, or should I drop the digamma? What do you think?
Let's do it, man. Then I can play with my whiteboard. I've joined the Great Whiteboard Brotherhood.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah.
There it is.
So I'll start out broad.
Beautiful.
I was looking into what makes ancient Greek stand out above the rest. And it was, quite humbling. We have a German friend in the Great Whiteboard Brotherhood. And so he knows either 2 or 3 languages. And it's just so humbling that it's really something that I believe we missed in our education, one thing that has kind of stopped me from really pursuing another language is that I need to start at the basics. Like I need to back up. I need to learn the parts of speech. I need to learn what aorist, perfect, passive, pluperfect, all that stuff, indicative. Whereas, so we could tell just from having a little conversation with him that he would spit these things out like it was so obvious that he knew it. And it's like we didn't even flat out ask him. He was just the way he spoke in regards to language was just such a big noticeable difference in my, like, it's kind of me as a dumb American, right? Single language American English versus someone that's bilingual, has that at least if they learned it at a later age, right? They have that sort of they know all the parts of grammar. So I thought that was humbling. I just want to start out by saying that. And so I'm what I did was I looked into ancient Greek and why it was put up on this pedestal, so much more, unique or better, they say. Such more of a powerful language. One we already went over, very flexible word order. The next one, I'm sure most of you already know, is that it has like a rich vocabulary. Basically, the big example is you got agape and eros, right? So the unconditional love and then the like romantic love. So they have different words, whereas in other languages you just have one. And then according to this website, thought it was interesting that even today in modern Greek, they only use agape for both. So they like drop the eros. But modern Greek also is it was kind of shocking to me. Like they can't even read New Testament Greek. Like they do obviously better than us, but it still is like super struggling, like almost a different language. So it's interesting to see how like that evolved. And then this goes to the next thing that kind of puts ancient Greek above others, is they have a more complex grammar system. And this gets into two things. One, which I'm still kind of getting into. Maybe some of you guys in the chat. Oh, I see we do have another call in. Can help us out here. So the use of middle voice. There are three things, active, middle, and passive voice in grammar, essentially. And they use middle voice. We don't. We just use active, passive. I think even to modern Greek drop middle voice. And then the other thing is the use of the future tense verbs, which on the face of it may not seem like a big deal, right? We just say like, I will be dancing, I will be eating, so, but we use essentially the present tense form of the verb, and we just put, the will be in front of it, right? And interestingly enough, I can't track this down. I wonder when it changed, but in modern Greek, it's the same like us. So instead of the will be or I shall, they put this word fa, or it's basically like, I think it's theta, alpha, something like that. And so they have this word, and then in front of the same like us present tense verb. So they, in modern Greek, have gotten rid of future tense verbs as well, and they do things similar to us, which is like I just described. So thought that was interesting, and so we're kind of kicking around the idea, what does that do? And then this has been like a debate for many of years. One of the big guys professors or whoever, I think he was a professor, maybe doctor or something, was like the Wharf, WHARF dash something. And like their side is like language totally shapes the way that you think. And then there's this other camp where it's basically like, no, that's kind of nonsense. Doesn't really, I know 6 languages, doesn't change the way I think. So there's basically 2 camps in this idea. Which I didn't get into because it's actually kind of really dry and boring to read about, in my opinion. But so that's where I'm at with with kind of the differences between the Greek. And then one thing I wanted to get into, which curious about chances of whiteboard here, is the missing digamma. Digamma is the 6th letter, was the 6th letter in the Greek alphabet. It went missing, and the story is sketch. It doesn't hold much water, in my opinion. It they say it got conflated. I think this is something we should pull up and maybe take a peek at the wiki. And while I'm doing that, you want to weigh in on anything I just said?
It's hard to comprehend what difference it would make to our thinking and behavior to have syntactical options that are not present in English. English is weird though. It's a hybrid. Like you can simulate these things like middle voice, where the subject and the object are, the subject that is acting upon the object in the sentence is the same subject and object. Like you do it to yourself in a way. But yeah, it sounds like Gabe wants to jump in before we try to track down the missing digamma.
Yeah, I want to kind of bring some of my synchronistic path into the context of this missing digamma. I When I learned about that, it kind of blew my mind, cracked my noodle, and I couldn't even imagine who I would go to for a straight, reliable answer as to how do you retcon a letter into your alphabet without generating utter chaos to the future. So in the symposium, the number 6 position is an empty seat. And I knew that separate or autonomous from corresponding it to the missing digamma, which is number 6, the letter F. But I already had a sneaking suspicion it had to do with the F sharp musically, and that F sharp is a discordant, or it's called, sometimes is related to the devil's tone. And I know that Pythagoreans are very superstitious about numbers and not presenting what is broken or in need of repair. It's not to be presented in the public. And they actually create a sacred space in the private to correct one another. And so there is a lot of superstition going on around this F, this number 6. And so one thing that is just so fascinating, the number 6 position is the loyalist with the shadow of F ear personality. So there was a lot of harmony around the superstition around this position. And also, the 6th prime number is 13. And those 2 facts stood out just like a glaring forbidden fruit in my eyes. These things are stacking up so powerfully. And so 613 is the number of mitzvahs in the Hebrew observances. And I already had the Hebrews as a real strong loyalist with a shadow of fear personality type, but it's also Freemasonry is a F and a M. And then FM radio is the primary radio station that all the loyalists go to, but the renegades like the AM radio. So yeah, all of these things just kind of stack up to pay attention. There's plus ultra going on here. And then I also just want to say, PK, when you were saying, there's all this language that you have to learn a language. And I think that's fascinating that there's a greatness of soul that you have to give yourself permission to be affluent in how to relate to other languages. Yeah, I just wanted to set those things out that, yeah, this missing. One more thing. The no digamma. I had said that word, those two words. There's no digamma. I had said that probably 200 times, pondering why is there no digamma? And then all of a sudden, over on the Great Whiteboard Brotherhood one night, I'm just kind of bouncing it around in my own head and letting the guys hear my thoughts. And I started playing with the word no digamma, and it just hits me like a ton of bricks. Armageddon in reversed. No digamma in reverse is Armageddon. And that's the quintessential fear. That is the quintessential fear. But I'm also kind of playing around with it a little more in the context of a number 6, because Gabriel's message to the world is have no fear. And I think that the synchronistic message here is have no dogma. Have no dogma. And if I had to summarize all of the if I had to summarize the essence of Plato in a single phrase, he leaves everybody with more questions than they could ever deal with. The whole Plato's Republic is just a Rubik's cube of quandaries. But ultimately, the reason why you don't feel satisfied by Plato's Republic is because the message is have no dogma. If we told you what to think, then you would make it into a gospel. But if you go through the Republic and come out richer, the reason is because we didn't give you any dogmas. And I think that's something that people would be vilifying the Greek spirit for.
I can't help but think about with the question of the digamma. So this is, again, the 6th letter. It's derivative of, well, I'll just show you. Let's pull up my chart here. So the ancientest of alphabets that can be synchronized together. Man, how do you guys do this? They come from a system that originally has 16, sometimes 17 letters. So all I can fit on my chart here, although this corresponds to the ancient Irish alphabets and a few others that are out there, like Tamil. Starting at the top, you got alpha or aleph, beta, bet in Hebrew. The second one I'll be saying is Hebrew. Gamma, gemel, delta, daleth. So just right there, A, B, G, D, you see how incredibly similar even the naming convention between the Hebrew and Greek is. Practically the same alphabet. It's just like a code version of it in the Hebrew. Alpha, aleph, beta, bet, gamma, gemel, delta, daleth. Then you have epsilon, and then you have the digamma, which is correspondent to the vowel or wow. So for us, it looks like the F glyph, and it actually retains its, like, the digamma isn't even lost in English because you have, it's basically like the way that the V sound is there in words with an F, where the F and the V are practically the same sound, like OF, right? Of. You're not saying off. You're not saying off. You're saying of, right? So, we didn't really lose the digamma in that sense, but it's just kind of an amorphous letter in that the vowel form or vav form can make sounds as diverse as a U, a V, or a W, right? And now also an F, how it's kind of evolved to this point. And back to like the concept of the nouns and the representation of a representation with pronouns, this double U sound does kind of like flit in and out of languages and dialects throughout history. Some places at different times lose sight of the W sound completely, allegedly. So another thing that's interesting to consider is how the powers of notation are correspondent in these old 16-letter alphabets. Like the Greeks say that they got this from Cadmus, these letters. But when you get all the way down to the last three, all of a sudden we get out of sync, where the Greeks put in 100 for rho and the Hebrews are doing 200 for resh. Same with sigma and tau. And there may be something there about the lost letter. I'm not sure. But another thing that's interesting, like I want to erase this and show, just more about the forbidden fruit that is the digamma, right? It hurts to get rid of all your work. Does it hurt every time you erase a whiteboard, guys?
You get used
Because
to
I'm
it.
new. I'm new to the Brotherhood.
Tabula
I just keep mine clean now. So I don't have
rasa
to go
is
through
the
that.
essence.
Painful. Okay. So wait, green is not bright
Tabula
enough.
rasa is the essence of change. I want to share
Okay.
that the number 6
So this-
position is the loyalist. This brings in the devil. This brings the
go
devil
ahead.
card and the lover's card. The lover's card is a vow. They're making a vow for their loyalty. And so it's very apropos that the vow is the lover's card, where you're promising to come together. The devil card is the divorce, when you break your vows. So I just wanted to say the Enneagram strikes again.
Chance is whiteboarding right now.
So that's a gamma.
Yep.
Now what happens if we put a second gamma on here?
It dies. Oh.
We're getting there's probably a way to do this that gives you a swastika. I
Wowzers.
have just messed it up.
Yeah.
Wowzers.
That's interesting. I never thought about that.
Yeah, exactly. Booty Yoga is picking it up. I think there's a better way to represent that I've maybe just choked artistically. But play with that. That's possible. And the sexiness of 6 being kind of a forbidden fruit too is possibly in the mix with the digamma disappearing.
2 gammas is 3-3, right? You just showed it was the third letter. It's alpha, beta, gamma. So
That's right.
Digamma, 3-3. What I get confused about is the story that they say, and the conflation with the sigma tau, right? So the digamma becomes the stau, which is the stigma, which is the cross, which we'll get into that, the mark of Cain. But I get how the digamma in its lowercase form looks like a sigma, especially like a final sigma. Like that totally makes sense to me. But why, how did this sigma tau where does tau come from? To get conflated with, that's what I really can't put together. And all these, everything I read about, it's just kind of like, oh, this happened, but it doesn't explain it or anything. So, and then, but it's interesting too, that this sigma tau, which in the Greek, like isopsophy gematria system, is 200 and 300 respectively, equals 500. Where one of the tricks or whatever in doing Greek gematria is whenever you see a sigma and a tau, is you can count that as a 6 instead, and kind of just see, it's as if like they might have been encoding that or this word if they were trying to express a like hidden, idea, esoteric idea. That's one of the tricks, is you could take out the ST, the sigma tau, And instead of it being 500, you make it a 6, which is the digamma. And that works for the word staros, which is cross. It starts with ST. Now, if you count that ST, the sigma-tau, as 6, then it equals 777. You know, which is Christian like, and Crowley knew. Crowley knew that.
Yeah. So the sixth muse in that empty seat is Erato, and she is the muse of erotic poetry, but in its pure and honest form. A lot of people project a lot of stigma at public displays of affection. And much like the Greeks were superstitious or cautious about certain things in the public versus the private. Like I was saying, you know, the anagram for Armageddon is no stigma, or no dogma. And that is that the person who you make a vow with, you're creating a safe space to be completely candid and even let your erotic self flourish in only their presence. And it's a stigma if you let your eroticism shine in somebody else's place. And so while I say that in a lot of shadow is cast onto the six, and I think it's because not that it's bad, but that it is sacred and only appropriate in certain context. So all of this kind of reinforces the essence of the loyalist with the shadow of fear, and my discovery of the muse Erato in the number 6 position, because she is present in the symposium because her children are the subject matter at hand. Eros, are as the name of the primary erote that is kind of follows her around everywhere. So yeah, I think it's on to the external purview, it's superstitious, but on the inner circle, it's sacred.
Right. I'm getting those vibes. I'm getting those vibes too.
I think there's still a sacredness to the digamma and things. I'm going to show you why. So this is how you would write Deus in more modern ancient Greek, you could say. So it's delta, epsilon, upsilon, sigma, right? But now let's just go back to how it would be written in the ancient before the digamma was dropped. Okay. You're going to have delta, probably iota, then digamma, then omicron, sigma. So that's D-I-V-O-S. It's really hard to do. Okay, no, it wasn't all on screen.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, just say that. Davos. Where did the World Economic Forum guys meet? What's the name of their resort town? Where they in Switzerland, where they do all the planning of great resets?
Is it Davos?
Yeah, buddy.
It's Davos. It's just
Yeah.
this becomes an alpha.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the name of the god,
so
the name of the
word
deity was
Davos,
Davos.
or dot.
And you still see that in like in the
Yes.
Hindu too, like all the
So in the
Divas Pater, Deva, words like that, devil.
yes, yes. So in the Blavatsky circles, they speak openly about the word Davos, saying that it is the location of, I believe, elemental spirits. It's where they convene or where they conjoin, come together. And what is really fascinating, if anybody's been on the Slick Dissident adventure just recently, I did a review on how the 9 muses are a Greek echo of the Hindu Devis. and they're not exactly the same, but they are sharing powerful natures to each other in a fascinating way. And the Navratri ceremony happens actually 4 times a year. I thought it was only twice, like a yin yang, but in fact, there's a hidden Navratri also, which means it happens 4 times a year. But thing about Navratri is that those Devis are every time observed in the exact same order, 1 through 9, and they layer perfectly onto the muses of the symposium. And so I'm always a nerd about not over homogenizing and keeping the Hindus Hindu and the Greeks Greek, but they are clearly echoing the same essential truth. And again, much like I was saying, how the 6 to the outside lens looks like superstition or something bad, but to the initiated, it's sacred. I think we're looking at the same thing. And something I'm always kind of thinking about, when the next crusade comes through, they might want to come after me I'm infiltrating the enemy's camp. But part of that is just not letting the stigma keep me uninitiated or keep me from self-initiating. So yeah, and you mentioned Tamil, Chance. That language is a sacred treasure of treasures. Elihu Yale was depicted with a Tamil slave named Tamil in multiple paintings. And where does Kamala Devi Harris, her family lineage comes from Tamil, India. And her last name is the same last name as the artist who made the deck. So yeah, these are all powerful, powerful truths. And you just came up with it separate from my channel on your dry erase board in front of everybody. So yeah, I think it's fascinating to kind of infiltrate their camp and not let the scarecrows keep us from digging deeper.
So 6 is the first perfect number. It's the, sum. 6 equals the sum of its parts. 1, 2, and 3, right? Next perfect number, 28. The one after that, 496. 496, random fact, equals Malkuth in Hebrew gematria, which is the kingdom, which is here, essentially. So, but with the perfect numbers, 6 being a perfect number, to go missing, right, as to some superstition or to some weird story about being conflated with the sigma tau, kind of doesn't even make sense. Also, another thing, you were hitting on the V's or the digammas in middle of words, but I've seen a lot is that it falls off the front of words a lot, like the H, say in Horus or something, just becomes Orus. So like in that sort of sense, it fell off from the beginning of a bunch of words. And I think now would be a good time to just run through these picks here, if that's all right. What do you think?
Yeah, man, you got them ready, and I'll just pull them up.
Yeah. Yep. So I just got like 11 little screenshots here to go through about this digamma. And so we kind of went over this. It gradually was till simplified in a form until it was no more than a large comma. That's interesting. So that's the thing of like how we do put apostrophes, right? It kind of signifies a missing letter in one way, but then in another way, right, it implies possession, right? Apostrophe S. But there, and then this is what I was talking about with the cross. See, sigma tau is 500, and then the stau or the stigma, just 2 different names. This digamma, they say, became stau and then became stigma, and equals 6. But here's the cross in Greek is Soros 777. So kind of went over that already. This is showing and I haven't been able to verify this, but it's interesting. And I'll just get to it. So they say the 6 is the missing letter style, is the mark of both Cain and the beast of Revelation. In Revelation 13:18, the one about 666 stuff. It's the only instance where the style appears in the New Testament. So they write the word with chi, X, and then this weird letter. It's like chi. We'll get to that style. And then gets into gets into crazy Enochian stuff, which I'll just skip over. So here's what I can't verify, because it must be a older Greek translation, or a Greek rendering. It's not the one that I find online, but that this phrase here, and his number is 666. See, here's the chi, here's the he is really how you say it, he. And then I don't know how to say this word, this letter. Do you, Chance?
Which
it's
letter are you pointing
basically
at?
this one.
Oh yeah, that's just another way of marking he.
Right. It's like
X,
that, but it's a different letter. Right. It's different
like
letter, different number
sound.
value. So this is 600, this is 60, and this is 6. Okay. And so this phrase here and his number 66 equals 2368. If you are familiar with Greek gematria and the Bible stuff, that is what Jesus Christ equals. Isos Christos equals 88 plus 1480 equals 2368. And so, the whole, I'm sorry, my mouse is jacked up, but this whole like 666 is the beast, is Jesus Christ idea. Okay. Down there, it's broken down a little bit more. So let's get into some other words. I thought this one was very interesting. And this is what I've been finding a lot, is that people are saying that, and in a weird way too, in Greek, that the digamma is still there in the language, even in modern Greek, because there are certain rules. You know how we have like weird, seemingly like don't make sense rules, exceptions, right? Well, one of their things is with the digamma, where it's like not in the word, but like it still kind of is, because of how then you conjugate the verb, is as if it was there. So it like throws you off, and it's like a one off, and I forget the verb. But anyway, so it's weird. It's still like in the language, but it's just not visible. But this was interesting here with Orion. And so basically rendering the letter W like the wow of it, and akin to warrior. So you got Orion, Arian, Orion, Warion, I guess is how you would say it. But I thought it was interesting. Digamma popped up there within the Orion word. Here's another what I was talking about. So that was, like I was saying before, the beginning, excuse me, the beginning of the word. Here's another word where the beginning of the word started with a digamma that fell off. And this is anos. Ancient Greek means chief lord. So in here, you could see on this little inscription here, you got the digamma right here. And then, it's got a K instead of a chi. Phenacti. Wanakti. And it's like, has to do with to the king, merchant, giver, compare etymology of lord, giver, bread. So just interesting stuff, and that's Homeric. So it was in a bunch of Homer stuff, and it's a very kind of confusing rabbit hole to go down because people say like, okay, it was written and translated without the digamma, but people were like, oh, but you could tell it was there, and that's way beyond my comprehension. I don't know how they tell it's there, but they tell it's there.
No,
Here, Apollo, go ahead.
I got something on that. Can you go back to Anasa?
Yeah.
This is a wild weave. I'm just gonna gonna rapid fire. The ninth circle of Dante's Inferno incorporates sodomites and usury into the same level of hell. And this, I think, if you can stay mature about it, because it is hilarious, it is revealing that part of the definition of inspiration is to be possessed of a god. And it says possessed of a god specifically, which is kind of co-mutual. It's kind of, it's like we were saying, ideas actually own us. And so to be inspired, the word poet is also translates to a god maker. And so this aspect of the anus and usury being correspondent is probably pointing at what Crowley was on about the magic is in the butt. And I just I mean, we joke about it because it's ridiculously funny, but if you think about it, usury is anal puppetry. And that is to say that when you get pulled over and you're representing your boss on the side of the road, you have to pass the buck on to your boss. You're not answering for the reason you're inspired to be there. You actually give them your business information so that the buck doesn't land on you. And in a weird way, your boss is doing anal puppetry to inspire you to usury. And so all of this really corresponds to a lot of the occult truths that you you self evacuate to allow somebody else to use you. But to make this more sacred and to bring it back into stigmatized context, when people would ask me about my life, people would ask me how I'm doing, and for some reason I had this knee-jerk reaction where I would constantly talk about my sweetheart and all of her success, and I wouldn't talk about myself. I would talk about how awesome she is and how great the kiddo is doing, and that was my muse. That was what was inspiring me, and that's what brought meaning into my life. And I became self-conscious about it, and I was like, "You know what? I need to talk about my shit. I don't want to talk about, other people's stuff. When they ask about me, I need to have more substance and backbone." And so that was a profound revelation a long time ago. But I think it does relate to the magics of usury, has to do with um, uh, who's fulfilling you? Who is it that's fulfilling you? And if you're a good Christian, you would just talk about Jesus all the time. And so, in a fascinating way, today in pop culture, a lot of people, when you talk about something profound, they derail the conversation and they talk about their favorite pop culture, whatever trope. But I think that this is just profound beyond measure. That the magic is in the butt, and whatever is inside, there's a preoccupation to the key that usury. You're
Usury's
preoccupied with
butt
somebody
stuff.
else, and so yeah, self ownership is about usury is butt stuff, but self ownership is bringing your full self to the table. Yeah, so I just wanted to talk about the weird shit, but also normalize it to whatever degree for comfort.
Well, speaking of the butt end of the alphabets, I wanted to bring up a possibility, around the missing digamma being the concealment of a mystery, capital M mystery. All right, so this is the modern Greek alphabet. They got 26 letters like we do, but I just put the digamma back in. When you do that, now the mu or the M is right there in the middle. And I'm sure you guys have all heard about the alpha and omega, right? Like Jesus being the alpha and the omega, or the word Yao, iota, alpha, omega, one of the names for the deity. Well, this comes from a time this comes from the fact that the omega is at the end and the alpha is at the beginning. But if we go back to an earlier iteration of this alphabet, the beginning is still alpha, but tav becomes the end. So what is modernly A to the O was A to the T. And in the middle, consistently throughout the scope of time, although it shifts some, but like there seems to always be an attempt to keep the M in the middle. This, I believe, represents a big mystery, big mystery that I could expand on more later. But for the sake of brevity, I want to demonstrate something here that in Hebrew, which I showed earlier, it's like the same alphabet as the ancient Greek, the word aleph, mem, tav, it means truth. It meant truth or wisdom. And in the ancient system, those things, truth and wisdom, those were synonymous terms with love. Divine love, divine wisdom, divine truth. And now so we've got a formula here, right? We got AMO or AMT, depending on where the termination is. So it's past, present, future, beginning, middle, end. It's the whole thing. And it's passive, middle, and active. It's all of these different triads. It's the sort of like representing a wholeness or perfection. So even the Hindus don't really understand the origin of their word Om. And in fact, it's not really spelled, it's pronounced like O-M, but it's not really spelled that way. They spell it more like A-U-M, like that. Or maybe it's actually alpha, omega, mu. Maybe it's Om, like that. See where I'm getting? And maybe there's a relationship between that and the Latin word amo, which means love. So we see see letters getting swapped around all the time in languages, right? So aum and amo, I think that they come from the same thing, and it's that Hebrew word AMT that, as the alphabet expanded, became AMO. And I'll just leave it at there. But when you put the digamma back in, it reveals the mystery of the M being perfectly in the middle. And there could be more to say about that.
So does that leaves 13 and 13, right?
Yeah.
13 above the M and 13 below the M.
Yeah, that's nice. That's good. There's your devil, Gabe.
Yeah, buddy. That is beautiful. Yeah, buddy. Yeah, right. So Machiavelli was notorious for using the middle section to hide the keystone of the cipher. Hold on, I'm getting zapped a little. Okay, am I back? Am I back?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. So yeah, Machiavelli would always put he would always put the keystone in the middle of his ciphers. Also, when we say Middle East, we're also saying my idol least.
Oh, can I interrupt,
And
Gabe? Because I forgot
Machiavelli
to
is
add that.
known to have
You brought up the Middle East. I just want to interrupt with one little point that Muhammad, that's the AMT that I was talking about. That's great wisdom or great truth, because AMT is no different than AMD when you're pronouncing it. So the spelling can get changed. So Maha is great, and then AMT or AMD, Muhammad. That's where we get that name, possibly.
Nice. Yeah.
yeah, that's glorious. Okay, so Muhammad, much like the story of Psyche and Eros, Eros he forbid Psyche from looking upon his face, and when she broke that law, and he shares that attribute with Muhammad, that you can never see his face. And Machiavelli gave the Christians the face of Caesar Borgia, and Caesar Borgia is putting a false idol, a false face on the concept of Jesus. And so that is the huge transgression that the other Abrahamics hold against the Christians. And so the face is a very telling transgression to others, but a sacred thing to the third brotherhood, the Rochambeau of the Abrahamics. So Machiavelli put that transgression forward so that the Christians would fall in love with a beautiful looking dude, especially their women. And Caesar Borgia was great, but the word Borgia is still used today amongst the loyalists. If you are a profound loyalist, even if you're scientific and not Christian, you're part of the bourgeoisie. So even the bourgeoisie has a loyalty to the lie agreed upon. So, and also Ficino, the translator of all of Plato, his name means little face. And so, and one more thing, the false idol of today is money, which most of money, when it was all metal coins, had little faces on it. And so there's something of filthy lucre, worshiping filthy lucre that has a little face that is transgressive to the sensitivities of the other Abrahamics. And I just love, Chance, when you put that formula down of if you're in the triangle of Abrahamics, no matter which way you move, you're moving into one corner that puts you against the other two. And that is so profound. And that's the paradigm I think, we're joyful to break out of.
Well said, dude. We got another call in. Chance.
Nice. Give me a second and I'll download that. We actually had one before that got deleted. It was not able to be played on the air because it was it was like just too windy.
Yeah, I tried to listen to it. Yeah. It was
I have the Telegram
quiet.
Premium though, and it allowed me to like turn it into text. And essentially the question was about anti-synchronicity or losing the state of synchronicity, and if that would be congruent with a state like Alzheimer's. And actually, I think that I would say yes, because Alzheimer's is rooted in denial and synchronicity is acceptance. Synchronicity is being in tune with the truth of reality because everything's always in sync. And then like the further you go into levels of denial and continue to exist in them, denying reality, it seems like you would probably miss you wouldn't see synchronicities. So I think that was a good call. Sky was the caller. Sorry we didn't play that. I was meaning to get to that question. But yeah, I'll download Mix.
So will you share me real quick? I just want to comment on your beginning, middle, last thing. So this, when you were explaining that with the and everything and the alpha and then the beginning, the end, it made me think of this. I came across this the other day. Very interesting. The tetractress, basically, 1 through 10, And here's the letters. You got your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you got your digamma there, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 being iota. They say that there's 2 vowel inscription EI that's written over the entrance of the Oracle of Delphi, and becomes the center and the end, right, of the tetractors. You basically got EI there. And then, so that's was kind of weird to me, but then I really like this part. The vowels AEI, right? So that's the beginning, the middle, and the end, the alpha, the epsilon, iota, and speaking like tetractys, right? Becomes the root of the word aeon. And that word aeon, I think, is another thing, maybe for another time. But the whole like aeonic life is in the Bible, and that's what Jesus talks about. And sometimes it's translated as eternal life, and sometimes it's translated as everlasting life. So the aeon and aeonic life is very interesting to think about, because how could someone give you eternal life? Eternal would imply that you've always had it, that you always were, right? I don't know. That's just kind of how I think about it. So, it's weird to me that that's not something that I think could be given, right? It's not something that could be given to you. So that's, and it's interesting here. I think it's all within this word aeon, that it's called semantic shifts, right? Where this somehow becomes eternal, right? And perhaps it never meant eternal. Something more like everlasting, which are quite two different things, You ready, Chance?
Dang, brother. That's powerful. I love that. That eternal life implies that your past lives are valid. It goes backwards and forwards. I never thought of that.
Yeah, I just don't. The main thing is I don't get how someone could give you eternal life. Like Jesus. I don't know the actual story, but it's like, believe in Jesus, he gives you eternal life, sort of thing. It's like no one can give you that. Internal is you've always had it. That's what eternal means. No one gave it to you. It always was. Or no one could give it to you or take it from you. But anyway, that's not what I think it says. I think it says aeon.
Man, I wonder what.
It's different. It's different. Yeah.
Yes. I wonder what Thomas Aquinas / Aristotle, who gave us the concept of eternity, would have to say about that. They'd have a lot of answering to do. That's
I
brilliant,
bet.
man. Thank
Yeah.
you for that. I'm going to chew on that for a long time. All hail the Great Whiteboard Brotherhood.
Right on. You want to play that, Chance? I only have a few more slides, but I really do want to get through them, this digamma, because it kind of like hits. And I saw Liam talking about apostrophe and stuff in the chat, which I'm going to get back to it. But do you want to? You're muted. You're muted.
Queuing up this call right now. Just like I have to put them through a little.
I could keep going.
Yeah, keep going. I got to put it through addition real quick so that it's a decent volume.
Yeah. That's what. So here, Apollo. So we're back to the digamma and words, possibly with the digamma in them. So Apollo, derived from a Greek verb signifying to deliver from. This one is crazy to me. So in the same manner as liber, the corresponding title in the Latin tongue, right? They're talking about like Osiris here and Horus, okay, and Apollo, is personified mode of action of the generator Bacchus. All right, go down here, look at these footnotes. So right here, Apollo, anciently written with the digamma F or V. So it was like Apollo or something, right? Y'all see that they say it was in here. Now, granted, I haven't checked these sources or whatever, but that's just interesting. If Apollo had digamma slipped in there, right? And it goes, the etymology for the deity name is not always satisfactory. Let's see, Apollo, sun god.
I just can't. I know I've been on the
Uh-huh.
UFO thing a lot lately. So when I see a Paul UFO, I'm seeing Abel UFO, basically.
Yeah, totally.
Bell's UFO.
Totally.
That's weird.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
You
It's just
know,
snuck in there. Hold on,
one of
look at
my,
this real quick.
one of my decode.
Real quick,
Mhm.
Gabe. The Liber. Now, remember Crowley Liber 777? Look at this. The adjective Liber is from the Greek
Yep.
luvo,
Yep.
the upsilon being changed to the I and the digamma to a B.
Dude.
So that they're saying that B used to be digamma.
Okay. Now we're getting further back into the ancient system, I think, because I did not know that Liber came from Luvo, allegedly, by this
What does
book.
luvo mean?
Well, I want to chase that down. I
Yeah.
want to chase that lead down because I think we might be looking at Lupo, like the wolf, like Shuri, Hades, the wolf-headed god, the wolf skin wearing priests of the old system, the Etrusco-Phoenician guys. And then Liber, that's named
Yeah,
for
man.
Bacchus too. It's named for the savior. Whoa.
Yeah. You know, lupus is in Libra. The wolf is literally a minor decan of Libra. And if anybody looks into the symbology of Jainism, the Jains have this funky looking sigil that looks like a lava lamp at first glance, but if you overlap it onto the constellation of Lupus, it's a sure fit. Um, and and this is an old weave, but the Museum of San Gandolfo, Saint Gandalf, was a library that they kept the Voynich manuscripts in. And so I looked into the linguistics of Gandalf and found out it meant battle wolf, which there's only one wolf in the sky and it's in Libra. And so the library of San Gandolfo is telling me that they are adhering to the zodiac and the minor decans, the fine details of the zodiac. And then right when you had Apollo UFO, one of my recent uploads is that RFK is seated in the phrase "Are you fucking kidding me?" If you pronounce it "Are UFO king coding me?" And so, and the Kennedy family is, infused with UFO mythology to the max. But a Paul UFO, that is explaining what people experience emotionally. When they see a UFO, they're appalled and they say, wow, which is the number 6. Wow
Mhm.
is the Vav, but they're also appalled and they say, are you fucking kidding me? So, yeah, in a strange way, RFK is strangely prophesized by all things appalling. And it's almost like we've been guided to uh, charge his name with awe. We're putting awe into his name. So yeah, there's something going on there with RUFO King coding me and RFK and Apollo Paul UFO.
Love it. I'm trying to track down this word loot. I did L U and then that V I did an N. So I did lambda, upsilon, nu, I guess omega or omicron, but let me try omega. So yeah, I was trying to track down that. Oh, there it is. There it is. All right, so I got it. It's it means to untie, to unbind, undo, unbuckle. See, LUV, LUNO, or whatever, like this said. LUNO.
That's in the mainstream etymology.
Yeah, this is just wiki.
Right.
But that word unbind. So isn't that, look at Crowley there, Liber 777. Unbinding the cross, unbinding stigma.
It's like anti-religion, religio
You know,
being
the lupus
to bind.
constellation is just a few degrees from Arcturus, which marks the lunar calendar.
Yeah.
And the moon is tidal locked to the earth, slowly creeping out by centimeters every year.
Huh. That's cool. I think we just cracked the Crowley Liber 777.
Could be.
Could be. Gabe, I'm sorry. You were saying like something about constellation.
Sorry. Yeah. So yeah, the lupus is just a few degrees from Arcturus that marks the lunar calendar in Eastern. So I'm going backwards on the zodiac. Lupus is in Libra. Arcturus is pretty much on the equinox, and then it's only a couple more degrees till Corvus, which is the crow of the heavens. So we are all within 10, 20 degrees of correspondence to the Lunar New Year.
Right on. So let me push through these slides. I only got a few more pictures. So another word, digamma, in the front. So consider etymology of the Greek Aphrodite, or Venus. So see here from Pherida, Pher, Pherida, or Aphrodita, right? Damn, my mouse is jacked up. Okay. And then it goes down here, you know, talking about just Venus being bright. He thinks from the Chaldaic Han or Hin. I don't know what that means. Gratia decor. I think I looked it up before. Anyway, to the initial letter, which the ancients affixing the Aeolic digamma to the final termination, us, you get the name Venus. So this is saying that possibly in that Venus, the word Venus, we got a little digamma hiding in the front. But notice this word right here, Frida. I was looking, this is where it gets kind of fun. If I could trade out my PH for a P, you got this word right here, Perdita. Perdita was the dog in the 101 Dalmatians. She had 15 pups. They went to go rescue 84. That equals 99. plus Perdita and her hubby Pongo make it 101, right? 99 is the letter name value of digamma. So spell out digamma, right? And do the gematria of it. It equals 99. It's interesting that the cross is 777, right? How we just went over. Jesus is 888. Digamma, which is the stigma, is the 99. Or you could say it is the 99 plus Kalel. It's 100. So that gets you from the cross to Jesus, or from the beast 666 to the cross to Jesus 888. But over here, you got in Shakespeare's Winter Tale, another name, Perdita. She was rescued by a shepherd, gets into this whole like Bohemian Sicily thing. But I thought that was very interesting. We got the word Venus, and then we see it kind of over here. This Perdita word, this Venus word, you know, and they say is Latin for someone who is lost. You know, kind of sounds like our missing digamma. But this word, Perdita, I'm saying relates to this word right here, which is another word for basically Aphrodite. We'll go on. Now, getting back to the cross and the apostrophe. So to crucify is this word where basically storos is the word that means cross. And so basically this is like the verb form of that word. It's storo, and it means to fence off with pails or to crucify. This gets very vampire-like to me. I don't know about y'all, but basically, you know, what's a palisade? It's upright pale. Palisading is basically fortifying an area with like, you know, sticks, big sticks in the ground, right? See, it's an enclosure. It properly encloses like a fence, limit space. You know, and this says he was born in the pale of Christianity. Over here, pale means to enclose or encompass. That's what like palisading is. And this gets back to, you know, Chance, I know you've done Jesus pole and pole weaves before, but this gets back to the storos. So let's go on to the next one. What do we got here is this is the word apostrophe. Now remember that ST is just the sigma tau being related to the digamma is pretty crazy. And even if you think about it in this language, in English, think about words that have like ST. And our German friend kind of did the same thing. All the ST words, you know, you got strong, stand, still, like they're very stern words, you know.
They're kind of stuck where they're at.
They are stuck. Yeah. So the ST is sturdy, you know. Now, and here's the apostrophe. It's a turning back. So apostrophe, a turning back, a turning away from a refuge. No other means of getting water. Thought that one was interesting. Over here in rhetoric, apostrophe, when one turns away from all others to address someone specially. So you turn away from everyone else to address, you know, who you're talking to. That's basically the turnaround apostrophe of it. And look at this is like the Lima list where basically I just put in the first few letters. And it pulls from a corpus of a large corpus of classical text. Okay. And right next to the apostrophe is another word that means to fence off with a palisade, which we were just saw was the crucify word. Okay. So this might be the last one. Yeah, this is the last one. So sticking on this strophe thing and apostrophe, right? How they say that the Greek digamma was eventually just replaced with a large comma. In other words, was replaced with an apostrophe. So just having some fun here with the strophe of it. So a strophe is poetic term originally referring to the first part of an ode in ancient Greek tragedy, followed by the antistrophe in epode. I don't know if I'm saying that right. But again, it shows here strophe means to like turn, bend, twist. Now the antistrophe is a turning back, right? It's kind of like apostrophe. So that word there too, you could think of apostate, right? The is basically turning your back. You know what? Wasn't that guy the Christian guy? He was an apostatized or whatever, turning his back on the faith or on the church, right? It's a post. So here though, antistrophe is a portion of an ode sung by the chorus in its returning movement from west to east. It's in response to the strophe, which is sung from east to west. Now,
I want to point out something to you, man. You just brought up the apostates. And yeah, that terminology may be understood to refer to like turning your back on the church. But where that word was really applied is when you no longer paid your dues. You didn't kick the money back up the ladder, so to speak. So
you didn't tithe.
You didn't pay what you owed. See what I mean? ODE, owed, OWED, owed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me finish on Gabe real quick. Let me finish this thought.
Yeah.
So it's sung by a chorus, you know, west to east. Now, I was listening to some Rene Guénon a couple of nights ago, maybe it was last night, but very interesting thing about the symbolism of this whole west to east or east to west. So the strophe is like the good, the upbeat one, right? A strophe is triumphant accents, beauty, power, ecstasy, and it's answered by the antistrophe, which is in the depressed, melancholy key. Okay, so the antistrophe is the depressed one, sung west to east. Now, symbolically, right? We are considered the west of the world versus or as opposed to the east. Now, whether you're on a ball or you're on a flat plane, it still is a circle. And this west east thing is seemingly arbitrary, right? And so what is interesting though is when the rise of the west comes, this represents more of the setting sun, right? So essentially, Guénon was saying, and this kind of stuck with me, let's see if I could do him justice, that when the west rises, it is essentially the beginning of the end, or, you know, the beginning of the end to then bring in something new or whatnot. But that's the idea. Just think of it symbolically. The west rises. The west is the setting sun. The west is the depressed or melancholy key, right? The east is the triumphant one. The east is where the sun rises. So just interesting here that, you know, the west coming to power and everything. And then
could be related to minor and major musically getting swapped, where in ancient times the minor was considered the upbeat and the major was the depressed.
Yeah.
It's the anatiodromia, the tendency of things to become their opposite.
Yeah.
This is great weaves, man.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah. So that's the end of that. Go ahead, Gabe. Sorry to stop.
Yeah, man. You laid so much out. Arcturus is the where the lunar calendar initiates. It's also the crotch of Boötes, uh, who signifies the poets, because the buotes is the great void. The poet needs to get out of their own way to let the inspiration come through them. The poets are the god makers. Um, and also, you were mentioning the tent post, or the stake that, props up um, the structure above the covenant. And sure enough, in that time of the year, right there at the fall equinox, is when the festival of booths, where they go inside of a tent. But recently, it has come on the radar that there's a profound amount of research around the very few stars that they can measure movement on. And Arcturus is one of those stars. It's a short list. It's like a dozen stars that they can actually measure over hundreds of years, a little bit of movement. And it turns out Arcturus, of all those stars, seems to be something of a tent post. It's its own derivative of a North Star. And so there's a potential theory here that when the poets that gave us language at large, that where the odes come from, the more you can sing in its original language, the more you're harmonizing to the old ways. And so I do believe that there has been something of a drift away from the inspiration that gave us the speak, the primordial language. But Boötes is also called the shepherd. That's another name for Boötes, and he's on top of a hill. So the festival of boots, and also the high priests have to go on top of a hill. And much like a shepherd, they're drawing down the energies of the stars, because you get a better glimpse of the heavens from up high. So the high priest of the ephod goes on high to commune with the stars. And so Arcturus will definitely be pivotal to that, because there are many cultures are still keeping a harmony to the lunar cycles and the lunar standstill. And sure enough, you were talking about turning away from, on the moon card of the Thoth deck, the glyph is Qoph, Qoph, and it means back of head. And so if the high priest is up on the hill like Boötes, looking up at the stars, all of the people watching this inspired one can only see the back of his head, because he's looking up and drawing down inspiration. Another thing about antistrophe goes from the west to the east, and strophe goes from the east to the west. Way back in the day, silver was mined in the west, but it was only valued in the east. And gold was primarily harvested in the east and only valued in the west. And so the the spell of that is not only that our language goes from right to left, and our language goes left to right, Eastern languages go from left to right, but also the commodities that each half of the world valued requires vast distances to travel, which gives a monopoly on the trade route. And we still do this with oil today. We dig the oil out of our own land, and then there's these monopolized motherfuckers that want to make all the money on the shipping, that we have to send it so far away, and we can't just use it here. It's a profound inefficiency that is making somebody filthy rich, and they're still doing that recipe. All right. I think that's all I wanted to say about the antistrophe and the strophe. But I think, when you're in a theater, they can control the sound effects, and you can actually hear direction in the sounds. They're that dialed with the acoustics. And so to a large degree, I think they can do some entrainment of having certain sounds or pitches coming from the left and other sounds coming from the right. And that's all what do they call neuro-linguistic programming. That's a form of NLP. So yeah, that's all the thoughts I had.
I wanted to expand a little more on some of the stuff that I got into last time I was showing my new whiteboard prowess. Okay, so the first thing is this symbol is an ancient church symbol. and it's usually labeled Chrismon Sancti Ambrosi. But it's too big to get into. We've covered it in the past, but this wheel, this is the ichthys. Before the ichthys, or aka Jesus fish, became a fish, this symbol was also called the ichthys. And right here at the top, you have the letter rho, and the rest of this shape is making it a chi-rho. And you got the alpha and you got the omega. So I'm going to make a case here that this is the same concept as the Hebrew AMT that I was talking about. So let's get into it. Let me get the whiteboard going. And the chi-rho symbol is itself a big thing to talk about, but just want to show you from the numbers side. All right. So you have the chi-rho is alleged to be made out of the letter chi, which is X, and the letter rho. But when you look at it, is that what it looks like it's made out of to you? Because to me, it looks like it's made out of the letter rho and the letter tav. So when you put those two together, the R and the T, you get this symbol, and you get, now I'm doing the numerical value of the original system before Greeks lost track and made the tau 300 and the rho 100. All right. Mm-hmm. So you have 200 plus 400 equals 600. 600 is an immensely important number in the ancient system because it's the number of years in a cycle between incarnations of the Christ or the Savior. The most modern version of this is the 600 years between Jesus and who? Muhammad.
Did the he stayed 600?
Yeah, dude.
The chi?
Yeah. This is the solar number. This is the solar number.
So it stayed 600. It's so interesting the way when you how you like are supposed to say it. It's hero.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
instead of chi-rho, it's your hero.
So when we're looking at the number 600 and going back to that alpha or aleph mem tau, they would actually put this mem, they would draw it like this. This is mem final, which is supposed to linguistically go at the end of a word, not in the middle. But sometimes, and you'll see this occasionally in the Bible, and it baffles biblical scholars because they don't understand about the 600 years of the incarnations of the solar deity into mortal form, is they'll put this mem final in the middle of a word because they want you to think about 600. So going back to and I got to point out too, sigma plus tau, sigma tau, 600. You know, if we keep 400 for tau.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's great stuff.
So that's interesting to me. And then going back to this here, now you can see that it's alpha and then the middle number, mem final 600, and then the last letter omega. I think this is like the same exact concept as the Hebrew word I was talking about, aleph mem tau. That's just what I think. The Chrismon Sancti Ambrosia, the Oracle of Saint Ambrose.
And you know, that whole tablet is a big rectangle. The whole slab is a mem final.
Yeah, it is. It's a big box.
That was excellent. That like tied in with the slide about which is so crazy that it's not in the Bibles that you find online or whatever, but tied in with the number, the Revelation quote, and Jesus and it being like showing the he as 600 and then the other chi.
Yeah, the other chi, which is 60.
Yeah.
And then the digamma for 6.
And then the digamma for 6. That tied right into that. That was great. It's
Cool.
really good.
We got to do this again, guys, and bring some
I got
other
something
brothers onto the weaves.
Yes. I got something on, people that give a lot of flack on when we say that spelling is casting spells. A lot of people can't even get past that stage of awareness. But a fascinating thing is that the Constitution was originally called the Constitution for the United States of America. And when they did the big switch out, it became the Constitution of America. And it's no longer what it originally was. And the potency of that is evidenced by O is a 6, F is a 6. And so it's a double 6 that was caused the change. And the symbol for change in alchemy is the X. And
Or if you do
so
it
I think that
on the Hebrew gematria side, then the of would be like in Vav, which is 76, the year that the United States was founded.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's
Because
potent.
IN
That's
is
potent.
70.
Yeah, man. So I sense the wrap up coming. I just want to download a lot of things for people to kind of, take and edify on their own path. Um, One thing about this, the noun to the verb switch of mentality, I almost see it as castrating us from our ability to even commit to the future. And in fact, today you need a contract to to put things down on paper in the materialistic paradigm. And your word isn't good enough; it's got to be on paper. And this is all Babylon. The material things own you, as opposed to you owning the material things. And one thing I love about the Second Amendment is it's not just the right to bear arms, it's that also, but it's adjustable rate mortgage securities. And when as an independent contractor, if the job has something unexpected that comes up in the middle of execution, I have the ability to adjust my rates to secure my mortgage, which is to say it's a verbal contract. I can change the price on the turn of a dime. And so that has a lot to do with um, keeping the verb of the execution of the contract malleable, mutable, so that we can, so I don't have to put myself at unforeseen risk. And also, I think it is rooted strongly in Hume's is ought paradigm. And this is a potent thing I wish I knew before the lockdowns. And that is that science can tell us what is, the materialistic worldview gets caught up on what is, and they are really going after what ought to be, and that is actually what people would say morality. What you ought to do is your moral foundation, and that is what has been eroded. And I think it has a great deal to do with future tense verbs being castrated from our worldview at large. And the only words that give us access to future tense verbs are wilt, will, and shall. And those three words are in the thelemic maxim. Do what thou wilt, shall be the whole of the law, love under my butt, and do something about will. I don't know. I always forget that maxim, but they're using all three of the words that have future tense potency in their thelemic 93, bro. Yeah, 93, bro, which adds up to a 186. That's a lunar standstill encode. So I just wanted to put that on people's radar about the is ought paradigm, because everybody in my life was coming at me with all these facts of what they're hearing on the radio or what in their media. And meanwhile, it has no weight on what we ought to do. So they're getting caught up in the facts, but they're not realizing the value of the verb. And so that's just a powerful nugget for people in future argumentation. And on the same wavelength, I want to put everybody's mind on the replication crisis. If you look up the replication crisis, do it quick because they're going to be eroding that truth. But we've been under a replication crisis for over 20 years. And there's a lot of links. If you're just reading through, there's a lot of links that lead you into publication bias and all of these things, and particularly the behavioral sciences that are proving that they cannot repeat the experiments any longer because we are the elements of change. And yeah, so that replication crisis, I think they're laying a cover fog because they don't want to admit that the old social paradigms, they just have no purchase on reality any longer. And oh, then the last thing, pi. On 722, on 721, Joe Biden announced that he's stepping down. On 722, the math community, who was highly activated because of the Terrence Howard malarkey, saying that 1 times 1 equals 2, that got the math community all in a tizzy and put a fire under their ass. Next thing you know, they launched an announcement for a new formula to determine pi. And it's absurd, but everybody should just look into that on your own time, that pi is being redefined at large. And so the is a new is. And what we ought to do about it is a fascinating thing. But there's another synchronistic nugget that is on the future. And this is me. I don't like to predict future outcomes, but this one is so obvious it needs to be said now. And that is that when the
Gabe, I gotta
chumpster
slow you down.
gets put.
Gotta slow you down real quick.
Okay. Yeah,
okay.
buddy.
Just for the kids in the back. You're saying that Joe Biden retires from public appearances potentially permanently on 722. And you're saying that the math community puts forward a new formula for pi on 722. The approximation of pi is most easily done by 22 divided by 7. So that's important part of this detail. And secondly, with the BP switch of the letters, right? We're saying, or you're saying that Joe Biden, Joe Pi done. Pi is done.
Yep.
There's a new pi on the on Pi Day. That these things all converged
completely. And Joe Pi done. He represents Pluto in my Enneagram, number 9 with the shadow of sloth. And sure enough, the moon sliced across Pluto at the exact moment that he went off the radar that day. So the whole spell is complete, and it was 180 degrees from the sun when that happened, where the Chumpster event was on the opposite side of the zodiac. So the synchromystics, we got a sense of the syncopating of all these facts. And so when Chumpster gets it, the 9 Supreme Court justices have been turning a blind eye. Trophy, they're turning their back, acting oblivious, and they're going to let everybody get their hopes up until on January 6th, it's going to come down the pipe that Section 3 of the 14th Amendment will not allow Chumpster to be in position. And all of the Chump fans are going to lose their shit. We're in the date, January 6th, is already a trigger term. It's already super emotionally charged. And so for anybody who missed that, Section 3 of 1-4 Amendment, this is another pi spell.
This blew my mind. This
ahead.
is worth sharing real quick.
Yeah, buddy.
Keep going, Gabe. I'm pulling it up.
Yeah, man. So another fascinating thing about the 314 and the potential of this to become the cornerstone of a civil war, whatever that everybody knows is whatever potential, is I'm actually inclined to support the complete and utter removal of the 14th Amendment. I can't help myself. If I had to vote, I would say just let's annex the 14th Amendment, get rid of it. And that would be the end of citizenship. And we would go back to the constitutional original. In fact, we would even have to change it back to the Constitution for the United States of America, we would remove the of from that phrase. And so in a strange way, the repair to this to whatever this problem is just what do they call that when they get rid of the amendment, just like they did with the 18th Amendment? They didn't make it disappear. They added another amendment at the end and left the
Nullify,
18th
maybe?
in place. Nullify. Thank you. That's it. So in a strange way, I just want everybody to not be too scared at the potential of just canceling the 14th Amendment in total, because that would end all of our birth certification capture. And also that would bring us kind of back to 1666 when they issued prize law and sent the lawyers who are encoding, who are pirates in disguise. That would bring us back to when the birth certification even became a thing at all. And so I don't want to be an alarmist, but these things are stacking up, and the signs and the symbols are giving me permission to make a future tense verb and maybe prophesize the end of the 14th Amendment. So that's where my vote is.
Can I flash this on the screen real quick, Chance?
Yeah, man,
Y'all
it's
look-
just the inversion world, right? Like people are going
14th
to freak
Amendment,
out about losing the 14th
Section
Amendment.
3. And look at what it says. It's like, so Congress has to kick out the dude. The judges can't do it. And that's basically what the judges said. They're like, we'll leave it up to Congress because that's what it says. But basically right here, United States, or as, let's see, support Constitution of the United States shall have engaged in rebellion against the same insurrection. You know how they keep saying, oh, it's insurrection. This basically disqualifies someone from holding office.
That's why they keep using that
in
word.
an insurrection. Yeah. And it's freaking 14th Amendment, Section 3. It's 314. It's pi. Gabe, that's such a crazy weave, dude.
I know. That's
It's
what
so
I was trying to
crazy.
talk about in the first half of our conversation about the way that all of these, the construction of correspondences as an active participant is a dynamic increase to your intelligence. Like Gabe's on another level. Yeah. But that's worth whole nother conversation about the 14th Amendment and why it's not all it's cracked up to be, and why we'd be better off without all of the rights and privileges and protections of a federal citizen, rights and privileges, which include the right to be taxed, put in, attacked, killed, murdered, put in jail, etc. There's a whole book about it called Straw Man, the story of your fictional identity by Clint Richardson.
I want to take it a little further, Chance. Can you pull up what I just sent you in the Telegram? I want to go the distance on the biblical prophecy. Total solar eclipse is an anagram for Aristotle collapse. I've been looking at Aristotle very suspiciously lately. Aristotle constitutes a number 3 personality type. My dog's going crazy right now. But 3 is the achiever with the shadow of deceit, and everybody is putting Trump in the context of an antichrist. And the Christian corner of the Abrahamics is totally a number 3, a healer. Riximachus was the healer. His muse was Euterpe. But the harmony is also important because thirds and fifths symbolize music. They're the harmonious music. And so there's something of a removal of the even temperament spell that I see coming. But strangely enough, Trump is moving into this. So yeah, Antichrist indeed. It's amazing how these signs and symbols are lining up. But also the questioning of Aristotle, the questioning of a nothingness, and the questioning of infinity is all a paradigm that once we remove it, then Aristotle is de-seated. He'll be dethroned. So I just wanted to share this fascinating little graph that our brother Aaron, big ups to Aaron out there. He put this together and kind of blows my mind Chance, when you said that no matter where you move in your ideology, you're cornering yourself into one of the three Abrahamics. Well, that is cornering yourself into the 3, the 6, or the 9, according to the Enneagram. So I just wanted to kind of bring this forward to support the strange prophetic significance of a struggle that might get us back to harmony. And that is the belief that there's no such thing as a nothing and there's no such thing as an infinity. And if there is, it has no place in our worldview because it's kind of a fugazi. So yeah, just wanted to flash that. Big ups, Aaron. Thank you for making that graphic.
Yeah, man. Let us know out there in our Telegram chat if this conversation sparks any thoughts. I know it can be a little scattered to just follow us as we work things out on the fly, but that's the whole impetus of the Great Whiteboard Brotherhood, is that we are in real time thinking and collaborating and putting pieces together, and y'all are invited to participate in that process more. I'm going to play this voice message from MS, and then we will close down the old shop. But if you guys like it, we'll bring this team back together and maybe get other whiteboard brothers to come on, because this was my first time with a whiteboard. I don't know if you remember your first time with a whiteboard, but it was special.
It. Dude, you're like a natural.
It's made for this.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, man. Okay, let's hear what MS says to us.
Hey, I just wanted to share something about the word Om. Om can also mean I am, like in the phrase or greeting Om Shanti, which means I am peace, but really it's a greeting to somebody else. It's kind of like you're greeting each other by reminding one another that you are peace. Yes, and so is my cat. Hey.
Cool. Yeah, man. We'll have to do more about the mysteries of the Om. There's a lot more gravy there. Oh, my. Oh, Jesus. And good to hear the kitty. All right. Well, you guys know the drill. Check the show notes for link to Slick Dissident's YouTube channel, ways that you can support the podcast. Thank you to the super chatters, Ari and Liam. Feel free to super chat anytime you want and get yourself a Battlefield tuning on my new and updated website where it's much easier to do. And just thanks for being here. This has been a fun one. PK, we got to have you back.
Yeah, let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, we'll just keep doing these sort of research collaborations, putting our heads together. I think a lot of fun stuff shakes out whenever we do it.
Heck yeah, good time. Thanks everyone in chat. Good to see y'all. Thanks for your messages too. Om reminds me of the Greek word ma, the ei mu I, epsilon, iota. It means I, like to be. Like Jesus said, I am the word. He said ma. E-I-M-I. Yeah.
All
just
right.
like it.
I think there's that, and it might be a corruption of the ammo or AMT.
Yep.
Getting it out of order.
Yeah. But yeah, This was great. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Gabe.
This adjourns.
Yep. Meeting adjourned.
Man, this adjourns the first meeting of the Great Whiteboard Brotherhood.
But not the last.
But not the
Big
last.
love, everyone.
Peace be unto you.